Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings, to the WeAreChange Sunday recap video, where we try to warn you about the technocratic surveillance states that really wants to take away your freedoms in exchange for conveniences, plus a lot more other important developments around the world that you're not supposed to know. And that's why in this video, we will be talking about the outrageous Michael Flynn developments that really have a lot more to do with Israel than they do with Russian collusion, a country which, by the way, just made their first steps towards a greater war with Iran. We're also going to get into greater injustices surrounding Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein with their court cases, as well as how Germans want a backdoor to everything. Not a surprise there. And of course, the biggest story this week is that Donald Trump's former national security advisor Michael Flynn has pled guilty to lying to the FBI on his contacts with the Russian ambassador, charges that is making him face 0 to 6 months in jail and a $500 to $9,500 fine. Now, the mainstream media is not really focusing on that, nor the fact of how Michael Flynn was spied on, but the whole mainstream media establishment is acting like this is a scalping of General Flynn, and of course, they celebrated this latest news announcement.
Welcome back to the show.
Breaking news.
Oh my God. And is prepared to testify that as a candidate, Donald Trump directed him to make contact with the Russians. Yeah! Wow!
And that ABC report was totally fake news, as we're finding out that ABC retracted the story, and Michael Flynn did not contact Russia when Donald Trump was still a candidate, but when he was elected president of the United States. A very important factor, since he was already president-elect Donald Trump and not a candidate, which shows the contact was not illegal. Now, for some reason, ABC decided to point the finger and suspend the anchor of this broadcast, and not the executive producer, which, by the way, is married to Susan Rice, Obama's national security advisor. So yeah, the mainstream media is just a little bit biased here. They definitely got their facts wrong, which gives Trump more ammunition. And they're still going on about this Russian collusion when the story here is totally different, and they're not talking about it for a very specific reason. Because we're finding out that it was Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law and advisor, who was the one who asked Michael Flynn to call members of the UN Security Councils on behalf and on orders of from Israel and their prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who wanted a resolution that was critical of Israel's settlement policy to be voted favorably in its country's interests. And it was Jared Kushner, the Saudi weapons-dealing son-in-law of Donald Trump, that directed Flynn to call every member of the UN Security Council, including Russia. Now, of course, because Michael Flynn pled guilty to lying to the FBI, he will now cooperate in this Russian probe within Trump's administration. And of course, we're going to be finding out more if these sources are true and more to the developments of this entire story, which, by the way, shows Donald Trump colluding and advancing Israel's interest, not Russia, which the mainstream media is not paying any attention to. And just now, we found out that it was also Jared Kushner who failed to disclose that he led a foundation that was funding illegal Israeli settlements before this UN vote, which, by the way, was illegal under international law, and a violation because he didn't put it on his financial records with the Office of Government Ethics earlier this year. This is the same Jared Kushner that has been flying to Saudi Arabia and Israel for Donald Trump a lot of times recently to do the negotiations of the future United States Middle Eastern policy, and also where he negotiated a better weapons deal for Saudi Arabia, which in exchange donated a lot of money to Ivanka Trump. And in reality here, what ultimately happened here is that Michael Flynn lied. And according to Donald Trump, this is why he fired Michael Flynn early on in his administration, even though it was the Obama administration that authorized Michael Flynn to have contact with the Russian ambassador. And of course, with all of these developments, Donald Trump is firing back on Twitter, where he is even telling people to sue ABC for their misreporting and fake news because of the damages caused to the stock market because of it. He's going on about how Michael Flynn had his life destroyed when crooked Hillary Clinton was being investigated. She was not on the record. She didn't have to swear in and lied many times about her situation. And in the moment of shooting this video, he is still tweeting about this situation, as well as new developments that show how the FBI had an anti-Trump FBI agent that was leading the Hillary Clinton email probe, which new documents prove the complicity. And we have to understand, this is the same FBI that sets up fake terrorist plots, doesn't have the best track record of honesty, and we have to understand that it was Michael Flynn who years before, when he was still with the Obama administration, that exposed how the rise of ISIS was a willful decision by the U.S. government. Something, of course, that pissed off the intelligence community and exposed how the U.S. government played a major role to the rise of radical Islamic terrorists, ISIS, that create terrorism all over the Western world. And of course, this was done in collusion with Israel and Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, this whole situation is all about. With Israel interfering, with Israel lobbying, with Israel's collusion with the United States and not Russia's. But it gets a lot worse, as we're getting new statements from Trump's administration, mainly the CIA director, who just came out and said that they are working with the Saudi Arabians and Israelis to, quote, fight terrorism. Most importantly, a joint operation against ISIS and Iran. And I have to ask, which one is it really? Because if you look at all the important geopolitical events and updates that have been happening, Iran has been fighting ISIS, while the United States has been arming the rebel groups against Iran. So again, just a very duplicitous statement, as we're on the horizon for more war. And Israel, just a few moments ago, decided to attack an Iranian military base inside of Syria, ultimately provoking war just like they said they would, with the media almost being completely silent on this, even though the ramifications of this are huge, especially with China, Russia, Iran, and Syria being joined together against Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States in that key geopolitical location, Syria. And Israeli fighter jets launched air-to-surface missiles targeting the Iranian base near Damascus, which Syria claims the attack caused power outages and explosions before they turned on their air defense, which thwarted 3 out of the 5 missiles. Now, Israel's claiming that this is an Iranian base, and Iranian forces are fighting inside of Syria, but this has not been yet confirmed. Now, even the Israeli media is removing the story that this actually even happened, as we're still waiting for the details of this to become more clear. But yet, this is another major escalation and a destabilization of the current situation in the Middle East. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is doubling down on his tough talk against Iran, which we've been covering on this YouTube channel, and saying that he, quote, won't allow Iranians to entrench themselves in Syria. And the situation sure looks like it will escalate from here, which we will be following very closely on this YouTube channel. And with Israel's military might and modernizing its army with automation and robotics, with the latest technological developments, this surely looks like a situation of when and not if. And also this week, according to many sources, Trump may soon recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, which of course will be a very controversial move, which is definitely not going to make the situation better. So yeah, that's happening. And now in other news, we have more bad news now coming from Honduras, as a US-backed regime is imposing martial law, suspending constitutional rights, with major protests and clashes happening in the streets right now, with major allegations of democide and lethal fire being used on civilians, with incredibly graphic and disturbing videos coming out of that country that we will not show in this video. And now in more injustice news, we are finding out that Jeffrey Epstein, the man behind the Lolita Express, during his court proceedings now, where he is facing charges for sexual relationships with underage girls, is being significantly delayed, and now the judge said that the trial won't allow any X-rated evidence. By the way, this is the man who is connected with the Clintons and also Kevin Spacey, who is associated with this man on his private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and that has settled way too many cases against him when it comes to having underage sex with minors. A similar situation right now is happening with media mogul and sexual predator Harvey Weinstein, with his rape investigation being stalled, which ultimately points to more injustice, which, by the way, enlarged the mainstream media and other news networks like CNN CNN predominantly fail to report on the expansiveness and how really huge and disturbing these latest sexual assault cases really are. Not a surprise there, because we live in a corrupt system. And now moving forward with more international news, the French people have more to look forward to, as gender-based insults have now become a legal offense. You know, just the government doing what they do, taking away your freedoms, which of course they would never use for their own larger political purposes, especially since free speech brings ideas, ideas threaten authority, and authority doesn't like to be threatened. But yeah, they're never going to be using the restriction of free speech for their own benefit, right? Yeah, okay, moving forward. Germany also this week announced that they want to have backdoor access to every digital device that people in their country have. This was a statement by Germany's interior minister. And what could go wrong with the big government wanting access to all of your digital devices? Whether a car, your computer, your phone, or whatever the hell you use, even your microwave is now a damn computer. And just imagine what the government would do with access to all of these things in your life. And luckily, this is just a new proposed law and has not gone into effect, and hopefully will be stricken down, because if the German people learned anything throughout history, is that they shouldn't really trust government. But yeah, as that's happening, and I do my news report like I do always here on this YouTube channel, informing you about all these things, I'm also getting censored. As I just found out that content that is demonetized by YouTube actually gets fewer views and hits than content that is monetized, which means the majority of my videos are getting less views than they should because of the stupid AI algorithm that YouTube has that makes sure that these ideas, that this type of content, that this kind of news reporting, well, yeah, we're just gonna demonetize it and not show it to anybody, and make sure that there's an unfair advantage to you, which has been happening for years now. We were demonetized way before it was cool. But it does make me think, what would happen if this wasn't happening to us? So yeah. And luckily, the few people who still get to watch it actually support and sponsor this entire broadcast with your donations on wearechange.org/donate. Because hell, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. So, that is the news for this week. Let me know if you think I missed the story in the comment section below. I always answer questions as soon as the video comes out. And because you guys allow me to do this and to be here, I love you. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more.